It's the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast with your hosts, the Wolf and Action Jackson, who are keeping rock alive by talking classic rock, hard rock, progressive rock, heavy metal, 80s music, early MTV, UK vs. US chart success, and much more. This is the home of classic album and live concert reviews and your place for interviews with artists and legends. You're rocking with the Wolf.
Out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to episode number 240 of the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast. Brought to you by me, your host, Mac B. the Wolf, and I will be joined, as I always am, by my partner in crime from the East Coast of the USA, Mr. Gary Action Jackson. And we're having an amazing summer here on The Wolf. Had a couple great episodes come out recently. Number 239 was about our trek to Sweden to see the legendary Iron Maiden on their Run for the Lives tour. Saw a couple of shows. Amazing set list. Fantastic performance. The new video screen they have and the animations they have really add to the whole thing. If you've got a chance to see the tour, go see it, and definitely listen to our episode if you haven't. We also did a fun first concert memories recently with our buddy Brad Page from I'm in Love with That Song podcast. Talk about seeing Rush on a brief tour between Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures, where they actually debuted Limelight and Tom Sawyer as they were recording them, with some different lyrics and some changes that would come. Those are both great. But this episode kicks off the first of three, as we remember one of the greatest events in rock history and one that was huge in our childhood, and that's Live Aid. On July 13th, 1985, bands in Wembley in London and in JFK in Philadelphia got together to raise money and awareness to help starving folks in Africa. Of course, the year before, Bob Geldof had gotten most of Britain's top pop chart talents and put together Do They Know It's Christmas, which was a big deal, which made millions and millions of dollars. Then, of course, the USA for Africa came back with Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie to create the song We Are the World, again raising millions. So then Bob Geldof, who kind of put all this together, decided we could make a lot of money if we did a big concert. Broadcast it live all over the world, put up phone numbers, and let people donate. It's pretty ambitious back then because satellite technology was not what it is today. You never know if something was going to go wrong. Plus, there's a 5-hour time difference, so England was going to have to start it off with the U.S. catching up eventually. And it really did have artists of two generations. It had older artists like The Who, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Elton John. But then it also had the big ones of the day. People like Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, Simple Minds, and stuff that we were really into. As children of the MTV generation, they hyped this up, and we knew it was going to be a big deal. And even though my father needed me to do yard work that day, he encouraged me to tape it. And I think we had a couple tapes of it, so we would always have it for all time. Jackson and I were so excited about this because a lot of the albums that we've reviewed this year were of artists who eventually played at Live Aid. It seemed like there was a lot of build-up throughout our calendar year getting to this point. And the fact of the matter is we were so excited about going over Live Aid, we put together what's going to be 3 different episodes of it. So this is part 1, where we kind of break it down for you and go through some of the first acts until they start flip-flopping back and forth between the UK and the US. So we kind of break down how it came to be, who's there, what's going on, some of the controversies, and then the initial UK acts. Part 2 will come out and do all the rest of the UK and US acts. And then part 3 is going to have interviews with a couple of folks who were there, including a very, very special guest, an original MTV VJ, who were super excited to share our conversation with you on Live Aid. Something we've looked forward to for a long time. Like I said, busy summer, going to Sweden to see Iron Maiden and lining up all this stuff for the Live Aid 40th anniversary. But I think you're going to like it. We've put a lot of time into it, and we're really excited about all of it. Before that, we do have a little bit of business to take care of. We always like to mention that we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, a family of over 100 different shows. You can learn more at pantheonpodcast.com or follow on socials at PantheonPods. And we're going to give a shout out to our 1 in a million sponsor, RareVinyl.com, who's based in the UK, folks, but they procure albums from all over the world, and they ship all over the world, too. And if you want some original stuff from folks who are at Live Aid or some Live Aid related stuff, you can find it at RareVinyl.com. And they gave us a coupon for 10% off. Ugly. UGLY. You use that at checkout, you can save 10%, and not just off one item, but everything in your order. So if you want to get 10 different records from 10 different bands that appeared on the stage that day, do it. Get originals, get imports, get singles, get picture discs, get whatever your heart desires. Get DVDs. I bet you can find the Live Aid DVD set on there. And then use the code UGLY and save a big, fat 10%. Your record collection will thank you. Now back to Live Aid. For our generation, this really was kind of our Woodstock. It was a super big deal, but it was also televised. And it couldn't have been done in America really without MTV. And MTV played a huge role, not only in the promotion of this, but then in the broadcast, hyping it up, talking to the different artists, filling time really for 15 hours all day. It's a really long day, and one of our VJ buddies is going to fill us in on all the details on that in a couple of episodes. And yes, we're excited about that. But first, we're doing part 1 of Live Aid on its 40th anniversary here on The Wolf. You know, Jackson, I was just looking back. We've done over 250 of these shows. If you include the first Concert Memories monthlies, we're somewhere in the 260 range or something like that.
Alrighty.
And we've had a lot of fun. We've made a lot of friends. We've got to meet people who we've always wanted to meet or interview or speak with. This Live Aid thing, I don't know if 2 shows is going to do it justice for everything around it, all the facts, all the details, all the importance of it, what it meant to us when we were 12 years old, what it has come to mean since, the artists that we've had on our show who participated. It's kind of a heavy duty thing, and it's kind of amazing that it's turning 40. I mean, I know all this year we've been doing a lot of recollection of albums that came out in 1985 that are turning 40 this year, but it seems like a lot of that is building up to Live Aid in the summer of 85. And after just doing all the research and watching all the videos, I'm kind of overwhelmed with nostalgia, but also kind of overwhelmed with information. Like you got to take the final and you're like, hurry up, let's take it today. I got to get all this stuff out of my brain.
It really was, like you were saying, it's more intense than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Just, bringing back all the memories and seeing who was involved with this. Because I thought I had a pretty good recollection, and then going through all these artists, like, no, this was huge. The fact that they got everybody together, got it off the ground, got it done on the satellite, which I think was, okay, fine, maybe what was it, Aloha in Hawaii from Elvis was a big was a satellite deal, but this was one of the first simulcasts in history all over the world. 1.5 billion, I think, was the number I came up with, people watching this.
Holy mackerel.
How did this even get started? How did they get it off the ground? How did they get it organized? And how did they get it all put together without giant just catastrophes?
I know. It was quite the undertaking and incredibly ambitious. And I just remember as a 12-year-old thinking, man, this is awesome. I get to see some of my favorite acts. And Duran Duran, who was kind of on a hiatus at the time because, the Taylor boys were doing Power Station. And I'm like, they were getting back together. Of course, that kind of worked out and kind of didn't. We'll get into all that later. There's so much to do here. Let's step back. Let's go to kind of the very beginning of kind of how all this came together. So apparently, there's a reporter for BBC News. His name is Michael Björk, and he was reporting on the famine in Ethiopia from 83 to 85.
Yeah.
And just showing, it's a biblical famine. It is the closest thing to hell on earth. There's hundreds of thousands of people dying of starvation. And part of it's because of drought, and part of it's because of the way so much of Africa works is a warlord takes over, and then you starve out certain people and reward certain other groups, and then maybe pieces of the country are taken over by rebel groups. And so even if you get aid, the warlord in charge is going to take some of it, and then the rebel groups are going to take some of it to buy guns to fight the warlord in charge. It's kind of like it's not always going to be a pure system there.
And that's what it sounded like. Like, I think some people knew at the time, like, oh yeah, they're having a tough time in Ethiopia. And then this report came out and it was like, oh, this is so much worse than we ever thought.
Right.
And just to see people who are literally starving to death, that's rough. And and to ignite that in people, like, we got to do something.
Yeah, these are human beings who are suffering for no good reason. We have plenty of food around the world. We have plenty of money to help. And something I didn't know is apparently these reports from Michael Burek, it featured a young nurse, and apparently her name was Claire Bertschinger. And for some reason, it was her job. This is just a young woman who wanted to help. She goes to Africa to do some aid work. And she would have to choose which children are too far gone to even, they're not even worth feeding because they're going to die anyway.
Yeah.
And so you have to choose. She's like, there's a line of 1,000 children in front of me that I can count. There's more behind them that I can't. I can only help 60 or 70 today.
Yeah.
And so she had to put a little mark on the arms of the ones that she would help. And she wouldn't talk about it for decades. She's like, I felt like a Nazi.
Yeah.
It's why am I in this situation? Why am I the one who decides who lives and who dies? I'm just a kid trying to help out. And it's like,
for somebody to go through that, that's horrendous. Cause I mean, 2 decades to not talk about it. I guarantee you, I don't know if she's still around today, but I'm sure when she closes her eyes, you can still see that.
Haunts her. Yes,
forever.
Of course.
Yeah.
How would you ever get that out of your head?
Oof.
So Bob Geldof of the Boomtown Rats picked up on this, and he worked with Midge Ure of Ultravox because they had worked together for the Secret Policeman's Ball in London, and I actually have that DVD. It was, it was a good thing to raise money for, and they had Sting doing solo work, which at the time in '81 wasn't a thing yet, but it's something he agreed to do.
Sneak preview.
That's right. And so he got together with Midge and they wrote Do They Know It's Christmas? And their goal was to raise 70,000 pounds for famine relief. So then Bob called on, everybody who was big in the UK and Ireland at the time. And I mean, it was kind of a who's who. I mean, you had Bono, you had Sting, you had Duran Duran, Bananarama, and the Spandau Ballet guys, Phil Collins. I mean, you had everybody, kind of there singing Feed the World, Do They Know It's Christmas? Apparently, it was recorded on November 25th, 84 at Sarm West Studios in Notting Hill. I think I actually know where that is. And then was released 4 days later. So not a lot of post-production, right? They just kind of come in. But then, it's a Christmas song, right? You're recording it November 25th. You don't have a month.
Right.
Right, yeah. You got to get it out. And of course, it went to #1 for 5 weeks in UK. It was Christmas #1, fastest selling single ever, and raised £8 million, which is a sight over the 70,000 they were hoping to do, And then, of course, the Americans got together. We did a show. It was really on the making of USA for Africa because that Netflix documentary was so fascinating. But, that came out in, was it February? I think it was, 85.
Yes, correct.
And of course that made a lot of money as well. And on the DVD, because eventually it took a long time for Bob to do it, but eventually after 20 years, he did release Live Aid as a 4-disc set. Now, it didn't have the MTV VJs talking on it like we watched all day.
Right.
But, and of course it didn't have every single song because I think there's something like 16 or more hours of music. And I think they only captured about 10 on the DVDs. So maybe if somebody had 4 songs, you only got 2 on the DVD or something like that. And of course, some artists had to pull their bits off of it. And we will get into that as well. But so then Geldof, once he realized, wow, that was a huge success, much bigger than I thought. Then the thought was, okay, we've got to do something big. We've got to do a concert. And he started moving towards that.
Well, now that's the part of the story that I didn't really know, because apparently it had a big part of it was due to Boy George.
Yeah.
which I mean, I knew he was in the video. I mean, he had a little bit of a solo part there.
Right.
But I guess he was the one that they were having some concerts at the Wembley Arena.
Right.
And they kind of did an impromptu reunion with a couple of people. And he was like, well, we could get a concert together. And then he went to Geldof and said, hey, let's make this happen. And I think he had already kind of thought about that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And for the Americans that don't know, Wembley Arena is right across the street from Wembley Stadium. I don't even know if you call it a street. It's a walkway. I mean, they're basically in the exact same entertainment area. And yeah, they were playing on December 22nd, 1984. So right before Christmas. And I guess some of the other folks who did Band Aid came around and sang with them.
But, let's just stop for 1 second here, because we always go back to this thing of why do we do this show?
Yeah.
And we do this show because if you're trying to figure out why bands are bigger in one place than another. So the Wembley Arena is what, like a hockey arena, basketball arena? Like that's,
yeah, I don't think it's
equated
15,000. I think it's like
Yeah.
12, something
So
like that. Yeah.
around there. But they were playing 6 nights. Culture Club played 6 nights at Wembley Arena.
Yeah.
They were not going to play 6 nights here at all.
No.
Anywhere.
Well, no, probably not. No, they could probably do 1 or 2 big shows in a couple places, but no, they're not going to play.
Right. So much bigger over there than they were here. And to think about putting this thing together, like having this idea, and then it just morphing into what it became. And then interesting, well, we'll get into Culture Club too, not being a part of the show, but that's a little later on in the story.
Right. That's later on. So I think he was kind of thinking, okay, we do it at Wembley Arena and Madison Square Garden, 2 indoor spots.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was actually an idea that, he played Duran could play through, and then, switch it over to Springsteen in America.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wanted Springsteen to do it. In fact, he moved the date. I think it was supposed to be July 6th at first. And he moved it a week because, Bruce had to finish some touring or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce ended up not playing, even though Martha Quinn all day was saying, and there's going to be a special appearance by Bruce Springsteen at some point. It never happened. But anyway, we'll kind of get into some of that later. Honestly, obviously, it was about, all right, let's put on a show on both coasts. And then that way, while you're setting up for one in England, the American act can go on. And then when they're done, you switch back to the UK and it can kind of be a show all day. Bob was... He was incredibly adamant about raising money. He kind of famously got on at one point because while Dire Straits was on, and they played a pretty darn good set, I mean, they basically just did Money for Nothing and
Sultans of Swing.
And Sultans of Swing. And Sultans of Swing was pretty good.
Yeah.
But, oh my God, someone tell the saxophone player to go take a bathroom break or something, go get a beer. You're ruining the best song ever. We'll get to that because we're going to have to run through all of this at some point. But at that point, like only 1.2 million pounds had been raised. And so he kind of get on there and said, give us your fucking money, like, I don't care if you got it or you haven't, fucking give it to us right now, And then, of course, Queen came on, brought down the house.
Yes.
And then after that, it was like 300 pounds a minute or something like that, or a second or something like that. It started rolling in. So if you've seen the Bohemian Rhapsody movie and you see that bit about after Queen came on, things changed. Apparently that's absolutely true. But okay, so we kind of got to get back to the organization of this thing. It's easy for Bob to kind of work with people and figure out the people who are going to do it in Wembley, but who's going to do it in America? And there's really only one promoter who could have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the legendary Bill Graham.
Correct.
Who knows everybody and knows where the bodies are buried because he buried them.
And I guess wasn't he was friends with the mayor of Philadelphia or something like that? So that's why he got this JFK Stadium.
Right.
No problem.
And JFK was just, I mean, it's where the Eagles played, obviously, but it was just kind of one of those open horseshoe kind of things like you would see on a college campus these days.
It didn't really look that nice.
It did not.
Looking at the two places, Wembley looked, I mean, I don't know what the difference is as far as seating goes, but yeah, JFK Stadium looked like they put it together overnight. You're right. There's no deck. There's no anything. There's the horseshoe, and then where they set up the band.
In the end zone, yeah, basically.
The end zone, yeah. And then a huge open area in the middle, but yeah, not really that attractive of a place.
Not to mention, and of course, neither of those places are there as they were then. RFK is gone. Where the Eagles play now is a really fancy, place. Wembley is still there, but in the 2000s, they rebuilt it. So it's still on the same site, but it's not the same place. And of course, there's been some buildup around it as well.
For those of you who didn't see Ted Lasso, this is where they played Live Aid. No, this is new stadium. Well, close enough.
Yes, I've only been to the new stadium. But the other thing that looked so much better in England versus Philly was the stage. The stage was at Wembley. The stage was like had this big white backdrop behind it, had two big logos. The stage was huge. America's was like just scaffolding everywhere, a bunch of random lights. They had these like clear screens behind whichever band was on, which clearly there were people warming up behind them and stuff like that.
People walking back and forth. It looks so
janky, like
and yeah, just low rent.
Yes, exactly. It's like, this is America. I mean, maybe they're spending the money on sending it to Africa. Maybe that was their excuse, but Jesus, it looked bad compared to the UK. Just so cheesy. It's like, what's wrong with you people? Don't you want to have any pride in what you're doing? But see, Geldof wasn't there. He was handling the UK side. Exactly. You know, so. And then it's like, okay, well, we could do a primetime special on ABC. Like, primetime special? No, this is all day. And who do they have to have? Well, you have to have MTV.
Correct.
And MTV came through in a huge way.
Hi, this is Guy Fletcher from Dire Straits, and you're listening to The Ugly American Werewolf in London.
So let's talk about the actual day there for a minute. I mean, do you remember watching this?
Absolutely. I was totally psyched about it, but it was like a summer day in July, and the family had a lot of yard work to do. And 60% of the reason my parents had me was free labor. Especially at this point where I'm 12, where I can use the power tools and the mower and lift heavier things and stuff like that. So I remember I recorded it on VHS, and I still have the tape, at least one of them. I don't know if I had two or not, but I remember I would just run in every once in a while, like, I'm hot, I think I'm just going to run and get a drink. And then I'd sit there and watch it for 30 minutes. And my dad would like, get back out here. Okay. And I'd run back out. And then I remember once we got done, then we did come in and kind of watch it as a family that night, like after dinner, as the sun set, all that kind of stuff. So we watched what were the quote unquote bigger acts on the American side of things.
Okay.
So I remember it being a big deal. How about you?
Yeah. Well, same thing. Like, it was, I mean, they hyped this nonstop.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was a summer day in Connecticut. There was no way I was going to be allowed to just sit there and watch TV all day.
Right.
Not going to happen. But luckily, somebody was away on our street, and we were tasked with watching something, a dog, a cat, something. So I was in the same boat. Like, I think I'm just going to go check on that cat, just to make sure everything's cool, or take the dog out or whatever. And yeah, I'd be down in the basement for like an hour or something. And then all of a sudden somebody else would, what are you doing down here? You're supposed to be backing out. Oh, what? Oh, sorry about that. And then, yeah, once it got to be nighttime, then we watched it at home. But yeah, I would sneak back over there quite a bit because I was not going to miss that, because everybody was talking about it. It was huge. It was, if you missed it, that was just going to be the end of you.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, there was nothing else going on. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge thing. Yes, this is where we're kind of in the heart of our MTV phase.
Right.
Bands that we loved were going to do it. Bands that were like old, like the Crosby, Stills and Nash and the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Youngs and those kind of folks, they were going to come back and do it, And so like, oh, well, I can see those bands that I never got to see. Also, there was this band that I kind of heard of but didn't know really well called Led Zeppelin that we're going to get back together. So, yeah, I was like, yeah, I wanted to see. Of course, I was always into music anyway, but now I was like, yeah, I got to see this.
And just for the bands, but also just for the spectacle, too. Just to see this thing go down. It was going to be all day, partly in the UK, partly here. Could not have been a bigger deal that day.
No, it couldn't. And apparently, it was the first time that BBC had an outside broadcast had been used for such an event of this scale.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like, this was uncharted territory as far as actually broadcasting it live.
Yeah. I mean, they probably needed two 48-channel mixing consoles, but they didn't have them. So they just used like 8, 12-channel desks and just kind of ran them all together somehow. But I mean, it kind of took a lot of technical expertise really from everyone, from people at the venues, people on the satellite side, the TV side. It really wasn't just, oh yeah, we'll just hook this up and make it happen. It was an enormous, enormous undertaking.
Well, and I think too, wasn't there a deal with at the beginning they wanted to go like commercial free, and then we were in the United States, we're like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
We don't do that.
Yeah, we need to get paid for this.
Sorry.
So then you've got the guys in the truck having to cut into the in and out of the live feed with these commercials, make sure those sync up back, trying to get you back in a certain spot because the show didn't stop for any kind of commercials. Like it just went on. And so I think they had to jump in and out of these things and kind of give you a little recap of what was happening on the stage.
Yeah, well, I mean, the BPC is state run, right? So if they just say, okay, well, we won't take commercials, then okay, the state makes less. MTV is a private organization. Like, sorry, and this is a huge deal for us. Like, how many people are going to tune in here?
Yeah, we're committing all day to this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like everyone who works at MTV is going to be there. I mean, yeah, we've got to. I'm sorry, we have to do this. But I mean, in watching it, Charles and Diana showed up.
They did, yeah, to kick it off.
Correct. And Bob was there, and I think Brian May and Roger Taylor, were back there with her, and a couple other people. And of course, there's Sir Bob. Everyone starts calling Bob Geldof Sir Bob at this point, because he's doing all these amazing things and he's wrangling people in there. I mean, Francis Rossi of Status Quo, who kind of kicked things off in the UK, he's like, Bob told me it doesn't matter what the fuck you sound like, just so long as you're there. He goes, thanks for the fucking honesty, Sir Bob. And still to this day, Bob he pushes back on anybody who says it was sanctimonious or the bands were there for wrong reasons or not all the money went to the right place. He's like, screw you. We did something good, which in today's money raised hundreds of millions of dollars, which is a big deal. And I don't know. I feel like the first time this ever really came together, this kind of thing, like a benefit, was George Harrison did this rainbow concert for Bangladesh in the 70s. And he got Clapton and he got, his buddies, to come. I think Dylan was probably there. And, the press was grilling on him. It's like, okay, so there's famine in Bangladesh. What good can one concert do? I mean, great, you're a good guy to help out, but are you even doing anything to help? He's like, you're right, doing one concert may not raise that much money. Maybe it only raises $500,000 to $1 million. But if we record the concert, sell it as an album, and film it, and then we can put it out in theaters and sell it as a movie, then we could make $6-7 million. And look, in the early 70s, $6-7 million is the GDP of some of these nations. Like, that's a big deal. And of course, George always had to push back against the establishment. He hated the establishment. They're always messing with him. He's like, you're ignorant. You don't understand. And we're doing something. Not to mention, we're raising awareness. And then people are aware of it. And then they can go to their government and say, hey, we need you to do send aid here, or we need to build some kind of supply chain so this doesn't happen again. Because that's the thing about hunger. You can ship a bunch of food and then everybody's like, oh, okay, shoot, we're not starving this week. Right. And then next week they are. So it's not just about sending food. It's about developing pipelines and supply chains and even farmlands. So you solve a problem. You don't just solve one-time need. Correct.
And that was the thing that came up once or twice that I keyed into on these interviews that I saw, is the idea of, raising awareness for this problem, but also kind of putting into the deal about how, you should give money. Well, I give money, it's called taxes. And paying for like Star Wars nuclear weapons. Right. Could we be using this tax money better? Governments, you need to step up to the plate too.
Well, exactly. And I think that's where that's more the point of it, and some people are like, well, why should Paul McCartney's worth hundreds of millions of dollars? Why do you need my money? Why doesn't he? Well, look, he's doing something to raise awareness. He's doing his part so that many, many millions more around the world will not only become aware of this, but try to step up and do something, so people can be cynical if they want.
Well, that's always what's going to be. You try and do something nice and then people want to just crap all over it and say, well, you could have done more, or, you're doing this for your own ego. And I think that was a lot of the reaction that people had in the after performance interviews was like, yeah, like, I'm just trying to do something. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, if we can raise awareness, if people can be aware of this problem, I don't know if one thing is going to do anything. Should we do this more? I don't know. We're trying to throw something against the wall to not solve the problem, because that's not going to happen,
Right.
but just improve it in some way.
Exactly. Do something to help.
Correct.
And raising awareness is a big deal.
Well, and I think it showed you too, back to MTV, how powerful that was at this point in time, that you could reach so many people, and these performers had a lot of power back then.
They did. And it's that star power. I mean, you just didn't see that even at something like the American Music Awards or the Grammy Awards. You didn't see all the star power that was there, especially because you're getting 2 continents worth here.
Right.
I guess this would be a good time to go into the acts.
Okay.
And kind of run down them. I want to go ahead and run down them just kind of real quick, just put it all out there, and then we can kind of start going one by one.
Okay. You want to go venue by venue, or do you want to go time slots?
Okay, so time slots, I'm going to have to go back and get my...
So why don't we just run through who was at Wembley and then who was at Philly?
Right, because it started at noon in Wembley, which is 7 a.m. in Philadelphia. Or on the East Coast here. The Coldstream Guards come in and do like the Royal Salute and God Save the Queen. Then Status Quo, Style Council with Paul Weller, Boomtown Rats, Adamant, which is a little bit of a controversy.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Ultravox, Spandau Ballet, featuring the first guest of our show that was at Live Aid with Gary Kemp. Then Elvis Costello, Nick Kershaw, Sade. Oh my God, I still want Sade.
Okay, son of a gun.
Goodness.
Yes, hello.
Then Sting with Phil Collins and Branford Marsalis, and they kind of did a bit of a run through there. And then Howard Jones, Brian Ferry,
who I didn't care about until I found out who was with him that day.
David Gilmour.
Correct.
The fact of the matter is, they asked Roger to put Pink Floyd back together for it. And he said what you would expect Roger to say at that point. He said, but I'll give you my band and we could do Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. They said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
He was still there. I think he was backstage.
Yeah, I think he was. But yeah, I've got a note here that they were involved at that point in time in some pretty heavy-duty legal misunderstanding. So yeah, that didn't happen.
That's right. And then after Brian Ferry, there's Paul Young. Then U2, which is kind of career making in some ways for them. Dire Straits. Then Queen, probably the biggest act or the biggest reception, I would say, for the day. Then David Bowie, who I swear to God, he's overrated. I know they love him, especially in England, but he's just a picture. He's anyway. Then The Who. Who were not great. Elton John, who's, I guess, recovering still from some alcohol stuff. Freddie Mercury and Brian May came out to do a bit. And then Paul McCartney does Let It Be with a lot of other people around. And then Band-Aid, as many as they could, finish with Do They Know It's Christmas.
Meanwhile,
back at the ranch.
Right. Back at the janky stadium in Philadelphia.
It started with Bernard Watson.
World-renowned artist, Bernard Watson, yes.
Born David Weinstein. So he's trying to hide some Judaism there. An 18-year-old from Miami Beach. He just graduated from high school, had no musical experience. He slept outside the stadium for a week, persuading Bill Graham to let him perform. What in the world?
and that's I think that in a nutshell is the difference between the UK show and the American show. It's stuff like that.
It's nonsense. And for an 18-year-old, he looks like he's been through it. He's already balding. I mean, I would have said he was 30. He did a Bob Dylan song, All I Really Want to Do, and then an original composition called Interview. He says, one of my strings on my guitar broke, then I dropped the pick, and that wasn't very professional. But I'm happy I got a chance to make it in this business. It was a dream of a lifetime. Never heard from that guy again. What a joke. Anyway. Then Joe Baez at 9 o'clock Eastern time, which is 2 o'clock in the UK. But I remember watching, I got up. They didn't make me start working till later. So I got up and she said, "This is your Woodstock." I remember that clear as what I had for breakfast this morning. You know, here's Joan Baez and this is your Woodstock. She did Amazing Grace and she did some We Are the World.
This is your Woodstock and it's long overdue.
Then the Hooters,
which is apparently a big controversial pick, but yes.
They're a Philadelphia band. So it's like we wanted to have Philadelphia artists. That's why Hall & Oates are big later. But, you know, the Four Tops came on. Then Billy Ocean, who was huge at the time.
Yeah.
Then the Black Sabbath reunion with Ozzy.
I was going to say, make sure you say that correctly because it's Black Sabbath featuring
Ozzy Osbourne. Right, because at the time, Ozzy
I don't want to get
solo
sued.
and Jesus, what a mess.
I don't want Sharon to sue us, so Black Sabbath featuring
By the way,
Ozzy Osbourne.
Geezer's bass that he was playing that day was really interesting to me. It had a really interesting design on it. But anyway, then you go to Run DMC, Rick Springfield, REO Speedwagon, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Judas Priest. Now, this is really, Black Sabbath is obviously a heavy metal band, but they kind of put them on at 10 in the mornings. Like, if we put them on at 10, Ozzy won't have much time to get so screwed up that he can't play. Jimmy Page will have plenty of time for that, but let's not get into that just yet.
Right.
So, Judas Priest, because my daughter was asking me, well, did Iron Maiden play it, Daddy? I'm like, no, they weren't invited, and they may have still been recovering from the Live After Death tour, or the World Slavery tour that created the Live After Death, but they were not asked. But Judas Priest was, because they had platinum albums in America.
Right.
And they were touring at that time. Then Bryan Adams, who couldn't have been bigger. The Beach Boys, they're the Beach Boys. George Thorogood and the Destroyers. Kind of a surprise to me, I'm not going to lie. Even though they're the first band I ever saw live and my dad loves them, I'm like, George Thorogood's going to play? Okay. But then it gets fun. Simple Minds, followed by the Pretenders, so Jim and Chrissy can be together.
Yes, that's so sweet.
Santana with Pat Metheny, which did not make the DVD. Ashford and Simpson, I should say.
Yeah.
Because they did Solid, because that was a big hit for them.
Correct.
But then they did Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand with Teddy Pendergrass.
No one's seen Teddy for a while.
Yeah, his first real public appearance since his accident. Then Madonna, who had recently been in Playboy and said, "I'm not taking shit off today." Okay, and then I think, because that's 4:30 our time, is like 9:30 over there.
Yeah, it's 7 hours there.
No, man, it's 5.
Okay, well, whatever. It's in the afternoon. We got it.
Yeah, right. But then I think Tom Petty was the first band to go on after things were done in the UK.
Yeah, and to me, that's when things kind of got wacky because they didn't have anything to cut to, so they had to kind of get things moving along.
So now we're giving Martha Quinn time to just ramble. We're giving Mark Goodman time to ramble, and we're giving Alan Hunter a chance to go interview people after their sets or whatever. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Tom flipped somebody off on the side of the stage at some point during this.
That's front and center. You can see him totally in what I was watching. It wasn't even quick either. It was just the rain.
Yeah, it's holding on. And he had these Elvis mutton chops that I don't think lasted very long. I'm like, Jesus, Tom, you're not that good looking anyway. What are you doing? And then Kenny Loggins came out to do Footloose, just Footloose. That's all they give Kenny to do while they're setting up for the Cars, who at that time were huge MTV darlings and and killing it. Then Neil Young comes out, does his thing. Power Station goes on without Robert Palmer.
Right.
Does it with Michael DeBar. And then Thompson Twins do their thing, but also they have Madonna, Steve Stevens, and Nile Rodgers do Revolution by the Beatles with them. And the Beatles keep coming up throughout the day. Then it's Eric Clapton with Phil Collins on the drums. And then Phil does his own thing. He does 2 songs at the piano. Then Led Zeppelin. Mm-hmm. We'll come back to that.
They're on the DVD, right?
No, they're not. But it's 8:00 in Philly. The sun's kind of down and it's hotter than snot. It was like 95, 96 degrees. Sun's on them. Nicholson. So they had some MCs who would introduce people. It was like Jack Nicholson, Chevy Chase, Joe Piscopo, Bette Midler was out there. Bill Graham did some. And sometimes they would say it and then they would cut to England, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Led Zeppelin was introduced by Phil Collins. Then Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young do their thing.
Yeah.
And then right after was Duran Duran. Oh my God, Duran Duran. I was losing my mind until he sang View to a Kill. We'll get back to that. And then Patti LaBelle, who I was a little surprised about. Like, I know Patti's big. Well, Patti's from Philadelphia. And so they're honoring the Philly bands. And then Hall & Oates, who are from Philadelphia, come out and they play with Eddie Kendricks. Who was part of the Temptations, and they play with
and David Ruffin too. Yeah,
David Ruffin too. Yeah. So could Hall & Oates have been bigger then? Probably not.
Yeah, they were huge. Yeah, that's what I'll give you. The Patti LaBelle. I mean, not only was she there, she played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 songs. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. That's a big set.
But a lot of covers. I mean, New Attitude was her song, but she did Imagine by John Lennon. She did Forever Young by Dylan. She did Stir It Up by Marley. She did Over the Rainbow. She's serving other artists. But anyway, after Hall & Oates comes Mick Jagger. Mm-hmm. Not the Rolling Stones.
No.
But Mick Jagger.
Correct. Because
that's a surprise to me. We'll have to come back to that. That's a little bit of, not given what was going on at the time.
Yeah.
But still, you would think, because after Mick did his thing and they did a couple songs with Tina Turner, then Bob Dylan comes on with Keith and Ronnie.
Right. So they're there. They're just not playing together.
Right.
Interesting.
And then, of course, they wind up at like 11 o'clock. And there's Lionel looking good, man. I love Lionel Richie, man. He is a smooth character.
I'm telling you, after we saw that Greatest Night in Pop, I have so much more respect. I mean, I knew he was a big time performer. I wasn't really a huge fan of his music. That's more like, what old people listen to when they're drinking their wine after a hard day of work. But to see how hard he worked and how he worked that whole crowd at the USA for Africa.
Oh God, yeah.
It was just so much more respect for him as just a human being and a performer. Absolutely. And he looked great. And of course, not everybody's there. So he, like Harry Belafonte selling Michael Jackson's part. And then they had Joan Baez and Chrissy singing together. Mm-hmm. And then Sheena Easton came on right after it and belted out her little part there. And so, even though they weren't on the original. So it's just, it's just kind of like, hey, we're all together. Let's all make this work. So heck of a long day, especially if you're Phil Collins, my God. But yeah, I mean, just unbelievable. And we saw the Don, Sonny Crockett. Don Johnson was there. He introduced Tom Petty as a band from Florida. And he also introduced the Power Station. By the way, Campbell had a sweet gold top Les Paul, man, that looked really hot. Oh, yeah. Yes.
I'm like, damn, dude, where'd you get that? That's nice.
Although, speaking of, I'm still mad at the Power Station for the Miami Vice
outfits
crossover. No, for the crossover when they were on the show.
Why?
And because he says he runs in. Of course, JT knows Sonny.
Yeah.
Because and he's like, hey, we got a new guy. You won't even notice the difference.
That's right.
You're being a jerk, JT. Robert Palmer laid it down, and then you had some problems, and then you didn't have to dump on him like that.
Well, you got to do something. You can't. It's obviously not the same guy, and
right.
DeBar was wearing that kind of Sonny Crockett gear or whatever. Besides, Michael was buddies like in real life with Don, like they're pals. Like,
okay,
yeah, when he was with when Mike was with
Miss Pamela,
and she was Pamela DeBar.
Correct.
Yeah, they're part of the Pretty Faces Club. It was like he and her and Don, and then whoever he was with at the time. Maybe Melanie, maybe somebody else. It doesn't, he's the Don.
Michael was, you see, you see him now, and, he's an older gentleman now, still very distinguished, but man, back in the day, he was a good looking dude.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
And when I heard John Taylor on the Rock on Tours, I think it was the first time he was on there, he was talking about how he was dating Bebe Buell at one point. And I just kind of wondered, did he meet Bebe through Pamela and Michael while they were in the band together?
Maybe. Yeah.
Possibility. I don't know that for sure. Anybody who knows could maybe let us know. Here's something I didn't realize at the time, and I don't think I really knew now. The fact of the matter is other nations and other artists wanted to help out. It wasn't just a UK-US thing.
Right. Correct.
So, in Sydney, there was an Oz for Africa, and they kind of belted that out. And it got on, I don't know if it got on, honestly, I don't know if I saw it or not. I don't recall seeing it. It's not on the DVD, but they did Oz for Africa. There's some Japanese did a studio version. There was an Austria for Africa, and so they did a little bit from Vienna. B.B. King came in from the North Sea Jazz Festival at The Hague in the Netherlands, put Rock Me Baby out there, Apparently Autograph did something from Moscow, and there were other people around the world who were kind of part of this that we didn't really.
Yeah, they may have made reference to it, but I don't remember seeing, maybe they showed it for a second or something like that, but none of that I don't think was televised in the United States.
Right. So, it wasn't just those artists that we saw. There were other artists around the world, other nations who wanted to help out. And so you look at it that way. It's not just these two white nations who were separated by this kind of narrow bit of ocean. It really was the whole world, or at least the developed world, saying, hey, we can do something to help too. And hundreds of millions of dollars in today's money, ended up getting there. So kind of amazing. I want to run through the performances as best we can.
All right.
First, let's talk a little bit about who wasn't there.
Okay. Because there were big names that were not on the bill.
That were not a part of it. And we talked a little bit about Springsteen. He just decided not to do it, even though Geldof did move it from the 6th to the 13th just to accommodate him. Mm-hmm. And Martha kept saying, he's going to be here. He's going to make an appearance. Bruce later said he regretted turning it down because he simply did not realize how big the whole thing was going to be, and he regretted not performing an acoustic set. Maybe not coming and playing 4 or 5 songs with the E Street Band, but he could have come with his guitar and played 2 or 3 songs.
Sure, absolutely. They would have let him do whatever he wanted to.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Now, if you remember when we did the show on the USA for Africa thing, he basically flew from his last gig of the Born in the USA tour, like in Buffalo or something like that.
Yeah, I think
barely made it out to get all the way to Los Angeles. And his voice was scratchy. He was tired. He was beat up, but he still dug deep and belted out what he could to contribute to it, Mm-hmm. So, obviously being such a huge star, his album was still all over the charts at this point. People kind of assumed he would be there. He didn't. Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Did not attend. Again, couldn't be much bigger than Michael Jackson. I think Michael was worried about overexposure, to be honest with you. And he didn't want to do We Are the World at first. And Quincy really had to talk him into it. He's like, no, look, I'm everywhere doing everything. I don't want to be that, and I got to focus on the follow-up to Thriller. Plus I had to drag my brothers around for a Victory tour just so they could get paid.
Right.
And now I got to start working on the follow-up to Thriller, which is not going to be easy to muster.
Well, and I kind of think part of it too is that no offense to Michael Jackson, but this whole thing didn't lend itself to his performance. He's got big stage. He can't just go out there with a guitar and sing Beat It.
Right.
That doesn't work like that. So yeah, maybe that was part of it too, is that it just wasn't going to work out. We don't have half an hour to set up this giant thing for you and get all these people and lights and everything else. It has to be quick and dirty. And it just wasn't, it just didn't fit his performing style.
Yeah. You know what? You're accurate about that. I didn't think about that, but that's true. And he just kind of used the excuse, look, I'm in the studio, I'm getting ready, to tour and to make, an album, and there's a lot of people employed.
Right.
Basically to do this. So I can't just stop that and have them not get paid. Prince also declined to come in person. That's not as big a shock. He doesn't like, he wasn't going to be on stage with all those other people, interacting with all those other people. Correct. That's not his thing at all.
Right.
He did do, a song which appeared on the We Are the World album, and he pre-taped an acoustic version of it, which was played during the concert in Philadelphia. So he did help.
Yeah, and I've got to note that he was worried about getting killed at this thing, because it was such a big production. Like, he was thinking about John Lennon. He's like, yeah, I don't want to get, somebody do something stupid. I don't know what the security is like. And so, yeah. It did not happen.
So it didn't happen. And then even though Boy George kind of helped spur the idea of we need to do a concert, Culture Club didn't take part.
Right. And I have here that perhaps it was because Mr. George was not in any kind of condition to perform at that point in time.
Maybe. maybe not. I don't know how deep into drugs he was at that point. I mean, I think in December 22, he wasn't. But then if you see the Culture Club Behind the Music, like he went from smoking joints to heroin like incredibly quickly. Like for most people, that's like years. And it's like, okay, well now I'll try these pills and now maybe I'll sniff it. Okay, maybe now I'll shoot it. It was like one day and then the next week he was a junkie or something like that. But I think he was worried about, 1.5 billion people is a lot of people. If you screw up, it can kill you. But the rest of his band were pissed at him.
But I would be. I mean, that's a huge deal. They were already part of We Are the World, so you figured it'd be a shoo-in. They were giant at that time. Yeah, you basically screwed us out of this huge opportunity.
Yeah, so that they carried that resentment for a while. Huey Lewis didn't play. And they were scheduled to. And, sports was huge. And they were, this really big band. And they're fun. And they're perfect for Philadelphia. But on June 28th, they decided to pull out. Because Huey had learned that, thus far, not a lot of the money had been reaching where it was supposed to go.
Okay.
And then Harry Belafonte ripped him for it. Because Harry went to see, okay, is the money going where it's supposed to go? He had just been in Africa to check that out. And he's like, you should do the same, Huey. Instead of sit back here and send out information based on hearsay, that's unfair.
Okay.
That's not cool. Mm-hmm. And then Annie Lennox apparently had a serious throat infection.
Yeah, like nodules or something growing on her.
Something nasty, because they would have been involved for sure.
Correct.
So she was forced to pull out, but she did do Live 8 at Hyde Park 20 years later because, she wanted, it's not like she didn't want to help. It's just she couldn't go that day. Cliff Richard did do like a studio song or something like that, but he was busy in Birmingham the same day, so he couldn't do it. Deep Purple were supposed to appear via satellite, but pulled out after guess who refused to take part. I'll give you one guess, Jackson. I'll give you one fucking guess.
Let me guess. Did he go on to do a band with Ronnie James? What could it be? Richie Blackmore?
Yes, it was Richie Blackmore. The biggest assholes in rock.
If it's one thing, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You know what? That was just a bad situation. It's always the same thing with Richie. Everybody there's nobody that's like, no, you got him all wrong. He's a great guy. No, he's a pain in the ass.
He's an asshole. Okay, that's what he is. Now, Deep Purple, without Richie, of course, performed at the Toronto leg of the Live 8 thing 20 years later, so they could help out. They always wanted to. It was just Richie submarined them, and then they couldn't do it. Marillion, who we've talked about on the show before with our buddy Jimmy, they, I guess, had an invitation to perform, but their manager had deemed it not worthwhile for Fish, their lead singer, to participate in Do They Know It's Christmas. And so they didn't get the invitation because Fish didn't participate.
Because he turned down the other one.
The song, yeah.
Got it.
I guess. UB40 was pissed that Uncle Bob didn't like our music much, so they didn't
pass the audition.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Ollie Campbell said it was a great gig, but I thought it was a bit dodgy not having any black acts on the bill when it was raising money for Africa.
There's a couple other people that have that problem also.
Well, there's some in America. There just aren't any in England because there are no black people in England, especially then. I think it's like 1% of the population now. Back then it was probably 0.1. And Live Roger, of course, wanted to participate. They said, no thanks, solo Roger. You can put Pink Floyd together, that's fine. But, of course, they all got together for Live 8. He did let them put the thing back together for Live 8, which is the last time the four of them ever played together. Mm-hmm. Tears for Fears pulled out of the concert.
Even though I think weren't they heavily promoted before?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think they just kind of freaked out. What about Sir Rod?
I was surprised Rod Stewart was there because we were going over people who would have played, who were on our show. I'm like, well, Jim Cregan would have been there if Rod Stewart was there.
Right. But that had to do with, apparently, according to Rod, for a long time, it was he couldn't get a band together. And then it turned out, his manager really wanted him on, the Today Show or something to pimp this. And I guess Rod got all mad. And he's like, no, this isn't about me. This is not about me going on TV and promoting my brand. Mm-hmm. So that just crashed and burned. But yeah, he would have been huge at Wembley.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And then apparently Foreigner and Yes said they would play it, but Bill Graham said, no, we don't have any space. So we've got to have, the Hooters and Bernard Watson on. So we can't have Foreigner or Yes on, I guess. It's just interesting who was there and who was not.
Well, and then the other interesting thing too is apparently George and Ringo were not there, and they were approached, and they said they got the feeling that what was going to happen was they were going to get duped into or roped into a Beatles reunion,
Which they did not
didn't
want to do. Yeah.
Unfortunately, not everybody figured that out. But apparently, for a while, like Julian was supposed to be in, with Sting, perform with Sting, because he was in '85. He had that Velout record out, I believe, and so he was hot. But yeah, I think he was the same thing. He's like, I don't want to be. We're not doing the Beatles. The Beatles aren't happening. We're not going to even be there.
Well, and we know that Led Zeppelin said, don't use our stuff. And then we talked about it on the reunion with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant when they did the DVD.
Right.
And they did the acoustic stuff. They did give some of that money to the cause because you're not using our performance because it's such shit.
Correct.
But we don't want to not contribute our part. So they did use some of the No Quarter release did go to that. So that was cool. I don't know why Santana didn't want theirs as part of it. I still don't know to this day exactly what their beef was.
I don't have any notes on that either. That is a little strange though, because that was big, and they played for a while too. It wasn't just one.
No, they played like 5 or 6 songs with Pat Metheny. Now maybe they didn't jibe with Pat. They thought it was going to go well, and they didn't. I don't know for sure, but they said no, take us out. But I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, look, the DVDs, and it's a 4 DVD set, 6 times platinum in the UK, 10 times platinum in the US. That's 1 million sales. That's pretty big. And now it's out of print. You can't get it anymore. You can still find it used, but I mean, I'm glad I have my copy.
That's interesting. That's if it was that big, you'd think they'd keep it around to keep
the money rolling in. I know. Yeah. I don't know. Canada, it went double diamond, which is only 200,000, but still, it's kind of a big deal.
Hi, this is Gary Kemp.
And this is Guy Pratt. And you're listening to
The Ugly American Werewolf in London
podcast.
The only place I really have the actual lineup where they're splitting back and forth is in the Live Aid program here on the DVD. 4 DVD box set. 1 concert, 2 continents. I mean, I know everything on the show comes back to Asia, and neither Yes or Asia played, but wouldn't you say that the Asia simulcast was kind of almost a test run for something like this,
It could have been. Yeah, I mean, and I would be surprised if somebody didn't bring that up in the initial talks. Like, we can't do this, or can we do it on 2 continents at the same time? Well, we've already done it with Asia,
possibly.
So then, yeah,
and there's more satellites by that time, so there's more opportunities. Let's start to run through some of this, because this was, I mean, I don't know if I watched all 10 or 11 hours of the DVDs. I might have watched one song and be like, okay, I get it, and moved on for some of these people. Yeah.
But you want to get a flavor. Like, yeah, no offense, but I didn't sit through all of the Style Council.
I didn't either. I like Paul Weller and everything, but anyway, all right. So they do God Save the Queen, the Royal Salute. Diana Charles come out along with Brian May and Roger Taylor and Sir Bob sitting up there. Bob is now royalty, of course. And then they go into Status Quo. Now this, of course, you talk about, we do this show to see, who's big in the UK versus the US, why some people make it, why some people don't. Status Quo couldn't be any bigger in the UK as a rock band, really. Nobody in America knows Status Quo, like, at all.
No.
And they start with Rockin' All Over the World, which was a John Fogerty solo song. And it's honestly, they have a responsibility as the first band to play on this monumentous occasion. You got to do something to kind of capture the spirit. And I think they chose a really good song to do it. And I thought that they did it really well.
Yeah, they definitely came out hot. Even if you're not a huge fan of this band, yeah, the energy that they brought, nobody knew if this stuff was going to work either. How was the sound? Yeah, I thought it was a good idea to put them first, because I didn't really know who they were. So I did a little research, and yeah, they were huge there. So, get the crowd into it. I mean, again, I think the crowd didn't really know what to expect either. How's this going to look? How's this going to sound? For the most part, all of these acts sound pretty good from what I was listening to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there might have been a few little dings here and there, but you gotta expect it on this big, huge mess like this. They're running people out every 15 minutes or whatever. It's it's not gonna all be like, this is your show and you're gonna sound like gold.
Now, I do have to bring up also, since we're just starting to this, the poor people who were doing the camera work, because a lot of this was, I don't know what to do. Like, there's people on the stage, they're running around. Where do we film? There was no, I didn't see any wireless setups.
No, there weren't.
So there's 4,000 cords all over the place, stepping over that, trying to stay out of people's way. It was a lot of this stuff, I'm surprised, didn't go a lot
worse,
more wrong. Yeah. Because, somebody running into somebody or tripping over something, or it was just a mess. Those dudes were running for their lives all day.
No doubt about it. No, and Status Quo had 8, 9, 10 consecutive gold albums in the UK. So, it's 0 in the US, of course. But, it was a good choice for them. They also did Caroline and Don't Waste My Time. I can't remember off the top of my head because one singer wanted to get down closer to the crowd. Well, you have to take the cord with you.
Yeah. That was Bono.
Oh, okay. Well, no, he did it, but other people did as well. It wasn't Tony from Spandau. It was maybe Paul Young did it before him.
Maybe. Yeah, because there was the stage, and then there was a drop down where, I think there was lighting or something down there, and then from there was a bigger drop off down to the actual ground. Then the 15 feet of nothing where the security was, and then the crowd.
Right. And so Paul or Bono, whomever it was, you're down there close, and you've got to have a guy with the cord to make sure it was stretched. And then I could see the guy with the cord smacking the reporters. The reporters, the photographers are getting up close. Yeah, I want to get a picture of this guy. And he's smacking get out of the way. Yeah, I got to run this cord.
Because he's got to feed it, but then he's also got to pull it back.
And then flip it over the monitors to the front of the stage, so they don't trip over there. So it was, that's the best they could do at the time, I guess, And
I was kind of thinking they probably just didn't have, wireless technology was there. They probably just didn't have the time to make sure that it was working. God forbid you get up there, you hit that cord and nothing happens. We can't do that. You're going cords only.
It's going all around the world. It's being recorded for an album. It can't not work. Well, how do we make sure it works? We'll plug it in. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Old school.
We'll do that. Now, the Style Council, of course, we talked about the Style Council earlier this year because they made the soundtrack of Vision Quest. And they come out and do You're the Best Thing, Big Boss Groove, Internationalist, and Walls Come Tumbling Down. Paul Weller, when he's playing his guitar, it looks cool. At some point, he was just kind of dancing and clapping along to the mic. I'm like, come on, man. That's not you. You're a guitar player who also sings. Come on, don't do that.
Well, okay. So that brings up another point of most. I don't know about the Status Quo and I don't know about the Style Council, but I can kind of guess that this was probably the biggest venue they were ever going to play. So it's kind of like, do we have to do something else? This is a giant crowd to kind of get him into this. I don't know. There were people that were way out of their element in these venues.
In a way, my boy Noel Gallagher loves Paul Weller. I think the Jam were a big deal for him, and so late 70s and the early 80s, it's the Jam. And then the Jam falls apart like all the punk bands did, by about 1982 or so. And then he does the Style Council, which is, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit broader than what the Jam did. He's with keyboardists, and so it's kind of that molding into a new romantic more than just kind of a punk band. And then, of course, he's kind of continued to be Paul Weller for a long time now.
You don't have to take this crowd. You don't have to sit back and relax. I know we've always been taught to rely upon rules and authority.
Next up was the Boomtown Rats with good old Bob Geldof. And of course they did I Don't Like Mondays, the only song that anyone knows by the Boomtown Rats.
Correct. Did anyone have to talk him out of not going first, Bob? Don't. You can't.
Don't go first.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did he want to go first? No, because he's busy sitting with Diana and Charles.
Well, that is true.
He can't just run right down there,
Right.
So, no, he chose Status Quo to go first, I think, for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Did I Don't Like Mondays, Drag Me Down, and Rat Trap. Now, who was it? It was our boy who's been on our show, Mr. Gary Kemp,
Yes.
talking about how Bob would make a hell of a politician.
That I would believe.
And he would. And he kind of de facto is, to be honest with you, without being elected, without any kind of specific mandate.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of forced this thing to happen no matter what. And, people got into it. By the way, they tried to do, because Dancing in the Street by Bowie and Jagger was allegedly a hit people liked at the time. They apparently didn't see the video, but they were going to try to do one simulcast, like Bowie's in London, Mick's in Philly. So Bowie would sing his part, and then Jagger would do that. Well, I don't know if they could make that work now. They certainly couldn't make that work 40 years ago. That's like,
I think it was a half a second delay or something. So it was just never going to happen. But the good thing was they did put that awesome video together. Oh my God.
What a piece of junk. Should have ruined both of their careers. At least Mick could go back to the Stones, which he did just a few years later. Anyway.
Yes.
But he said he felt the power, that Bob gave off during that show. And of course, Gary was not wearing, he's wearing a shirt, but it was open, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, but I mean, I guess that's the way people walked around back then if you were a rock star, or walk around with your shirt open.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about his look for that day, I'm getting those pants. Those are fantastic. The blue tartan pants he was wearing, that looks super cool.
Very, very nice. Yeah, indeed. And it couldn't have been as hot at Wembley as it was at RFK, just judging by what the artists were wearing. Because Tony was in full-on New Romantic regalia. So was Martin. Like, they had a lot of clothes on.
But I still think after looking at all three of the performances they did, I think at some time he was like, that all black leather trench coat may have been a bad idea.
Maybe.
It's hot now. Get me out of here.
Exactly.
Should we talk about Adamant?
Yeah, let's talk about Adamant, because there's a little controversy, as they say in England. Not controversy, but controversy.
Controversy. I thought it was a little strange that he only played one song.
Well, I agree with you there. So what was the story? Was it that Bob asked him to do it, not thinking he'd get as many bands as he wanted, and then when as many did show up, it was like, okay, well, we didn't really need you in the first place, and we don't need you now? What was that all about?
I think it was a deal where I think you're right, and I think Adam Ant figured out later that Geldof made some kind of comment that, Ant was over the hill, but he still had some, the name was still somewhere, but yeah, he was a has-been or something like that, and the top of his head exploded because he agreed to come and do this thing,
right?
And then you're gonna
trash me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, go fuck yourself, Bob.
Ant later claimed to regret playing the fundraiser, saying, "I was asked by Sir Bob to promote this concert. They had no idea they could sell it out." Then in Bob's book, he said, quote, "Adam was over the hill, so I let him do one number. Doing that show was the biggest fucking mistake in the world. Knighthoods were made, Bono got it made, and it was a waste of time for me. It was all the end of rock and roll."
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I guess that was the deal, was that Bob kind of used him to perhaps sell some tickets when he didn't have the rest of the lineup put together, and then he just kind of trashed him. Kind of sounds like Bob's not the nicest person to fellow artists
to deal with. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's because he's not really an artist himself.
Well, oh my God, dare you say that? Boomtown Rats were.
He's a bad artist. He's a below average artist. So Bob in his autobiography said that Miles Copeland, brother of Stuart Copeland and manager of Adamant and Sting, asked Geldof if he had thought of asking Ant after Geldof had already gotten in touch with Miles to ask Sting to do it. I said, I hadn't thought about that. I thought he was a bit passé, but then so was my band, the Boomtown Rats, and each represented a certain piece of pop history. So I agreed to let Adam kind of do it. And I also thought that might help encourage Sting or even all the Police to do it, but all the Police weren't going to happen at that point, Bob. Not for you or anybody. That's for sure. I thought that was a bummer because honestly, I was psyched to see Adamant there, to be honest with you. He did Viva La Rock, and then that was it. And then comes Ultravox, who we don't know in the United States. I mean, I know Miggy. How do you pronounce that name?
I think it's Midure. Something.
Okay.
I don't know.
Get a new name. Okay.
Yeah.
Reap the Wild Wind, Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, One Small Day, and Vienna. Bigger deal in Europe than they are here, obviously. And he helped write Feed the World, Do They Know It's Christmas?
Right.
So he deserves a spot, absolutely. But do I know who you are? No, I don't. Not really. I mean,
Yeah, no.
sorry.
No.
Kind of that art rock stuff that like the critics like and artists who never go anywhere like. And, people who don't have a wide circle of friends like, but like kind of missed out by the general population.
Do you want to come over and listen to my Ultravox records? No. No, I do not.
No, I don't. But thanks for asking.
Yes, I appreciate
I'm
it.
going to go out with girls now, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation, you fucking nerd. So, but okay, after Boomtown Rats and Adam Ant, and they're getting ready for Spandau, there may have been a place where they popped in what some of the Japanese bands were doing at the time. Not 100%. It's just from reading this in the Live Aid program, it looks like that's what they did. And then they go to Spandau Ballet. They did Only When You Leave, Virgin, and then, of course, they ended with True, with Tony saying, this song means a lot to us. I hope it means a lot to you too. And they did True, and it was great. And, and I can't remember exactly what he said. It was something about, have an amazing day or something like that, and it just kind of, there's a juxtaposition. Like, I know you guys are having a great day. It's a beautiful day in Britain and you're seeing all these incredible bands, but this is for people who are starving to death, who are not having a great day.
Okay.
And, and in fact, in this booklet, right next to the rundown of the list, there's a starving child sitting right there.
Yeah,
just to remind you, hey,
Yeah.
this is not just for fun. There's a point to all this, and it's important.
I will have to say at this point in time, all of the people I won't say all, most of the people on the UK bill, they're all very stylish so far. And that was one of the things that struck me. Like a lot of the American bands just kind of showed up off the street.
Right.
I don't know. Whereas these guys all had, they had fashionable clothing for the time.
That's
Some
right.
of it was open, some of it was not.
Right.
Looking at you, Gary. But I mean, that was the thing too. And the ladies on the Spandau Ballet,
The singers.
stage, they sounded phenomenal. That's another reoccurring thing. It's the people that have the backup singers to hit the high notes.
Yeah.
Very good idea.
Yeah, no, Spandau looked and sounded great from the early part of the show. They stood out as the best to me, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm biased because I like Gary Kemp, but
Yeah.
I thought they looked and sounded great. Next came Elvis Costello, who's always, a bit of an outsider.
Right.
Only did one song, All You Need Is Love.
Well, yeah, but he starts off with, help me sing this old Northern English folk song. And then he goes into that. And of course, everybody knows that song. So I thought it was a little weird. He only played one song also.
That was the thing. Why did he only do one song? Because they needed all this time to get set up for Nick Kershaw.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know all his songs. Wouldn't It Be Good?
That was his big hit.
That was the big hit, and it was in like the Pretty in Pink soundtrack, or it was one of those John Hughes films, or it was in the movie if it wasn't on the.
In 1985, wouldn't it be good? It appeared to the soundtrack to the film Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Who was in that?
No, that was with the bald guy of Revenge of the Nerds fan, Anthony Edwards, and
Linda Fiorentino.
Yes, but yes, it was on the soundtrack for Pretty in Pink.
Okay, I will say that they did announce him, because I picked up on this too. A young British artist who's never had anything but hits. All right, take it easy. Okay, Nick.
Wide Boy, never heard of it. Don Quixote, never heard of it. The Riddle, never heard of it. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Hits in the UK is not the same as hits in the big venue. Just letting you know, guys. Take a step back. But then, my friend, oh yes. Because in between, they did that connection to Holland for B.B. King at that festival.
Oh, okay.
So they could get ready. And then Sade.
Which just proves that life is not always fair. You should not look like that and be able to sing like that.
Oh my God. She
at
is
the same time.
so sexy, dude.
And not sexy like trying too hard.
No,
sexy,
not like Madonna
just
slutty sexy.
Correct.
Like classy sexy.
Like somebody who would walk into a room and like your head would turn like, who in the hell is that?
Woman, I know.
Wow.
My goodness. Gotta be kidding me, man. Oh, wow. Yeah, so no, I'm flipping out. My dad is flipping out. He loved Sade, still does, and like, oh man, and she wasn't even. I mean, she wasn't even dressed really sexy. I mean, I think she had like the baggy pants of the day, and at first she had a jacket. Maybe she took it off to have like a white shirt under it. But Your Love Is King is so awesome. She did Why Can't We Live Together? Your Love Is King, and Is It a Crime? It is a crime that she's so beautiful. And just such an amazing artist as well. I have seen Sade. It is a romantic night.
Crown you in my heart, your love is king. Never need to part, your kisses ring. Round and round, round my head, touching the very part of me. It's making my soul sing, tearing the very heart of me. I'm crying out for war.
Okay, next up.
Yes.
Sting comes out.
You're correct.
And he's got Phil with him to do some drumming or whatever.
Actually, I don't even think, no, he doesn't.
Oh, you're right. He
drums
doesn't
at all.
Because it's just him, Sting, doing Roxanne.
And Branford.
And Branford Marsalis, that's right.
Yeah.
And then Driven to Tears, which is kind of a protest song. Too many cameras and not enough food. This is what we sing. Driven to Tears. I love that song, and I think it was appropriate. I think he made the right choice, at that moment to sing that song. Then Phil comes out to do Against All Odds. Take a Look at Me Now. Sting does Message in a Bottle.
And I thought it was cool because while Phil is doing this, now Sting and Branford are just sitting there. Yeah. They're just sitting on stage,
watching.
They're part of the crowd now.
Right. And then Phil does In the Air Tonight. Then Long Way to Go for both of them, and Every Breath You Take. Of course, you're going to end with Every Breath You Take. My goodness.
Now, Long, Long Way to Go would have been a mystery to me had we not reviewed No Jacket Required.
Right.
Because that's from the later on down in the track listing, but also part of the Miami Vice world also.
That's exactly right. So we've talked about that. So like when I was saying that it's like this whole year has been building up to this Live Aid review, it's because we've done like 10 reviews or something like that. They're all related to this in some way.
Right.
Then Howard Jones came on. Now I think Howard, and I liked Howard Jones a lot, but they only gave him one song. I feel like it was like we just needed to kill some time between the Sting Phil Collins setup before the Brian Ferry setup, because Brian Ferry had a lot of people on stage with him.
And Howard came out by himself, right? He just sat at the piano.
Just sat at the piano by himself and did Hide and Seek.
Yeah, so I think you're right. There was kind of a place filler. No, things can only get better.
You would think.
Right?
Right.
But no.
No. So, all right. So then they go to Brian Ferry, of course, of Roxy Music fame, who is now a solo artist. He does Sensation. He does Boys and Girls, Slave to Love, and then he does Jealous Guy. Interesting
And I was going to pass on this whole thing. Like I said before, I'm like, I don't really care about Brian Ferry. But then it was like with David Gilmour. Okay, yeah, I'm going to sit here and watch this because I want to see David play, even though this goes back to my comment about the camera people. Gilmour didn't get a whole lot of camera time because I don't think they really know what to do at that point in time.
No, and I don't think they had quite the access. There might have been one guy or maybe two on stage. I feel like there were more on stage in the chaos in America versus the clean setup that they had in London there. And then
this is a strange deal, but go on. Yes. Next.
Okay. So I think they may have gone to another country again, like to Germany or Austria or something like that, to do whatever they were doing. Then they go to Paul Young.
Okay.
Who was, a big
He was
star.
Huge at that point in time. Correct.
Absolutely. And he was on Do They Know It's Christmas? His song Every Time You Go Away was what he finished with.
But he led that song. He was the first voice that you hear.
It is Christmas time. Yeah. That's him. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And he did a little intro to that because that is his thing. Kind of interesting. Does come back and stay. And then he introduces Alison Moyet. That's the Way Love Is.
From Yaz or Yazoo, depending on where you live.
Yaz. Was Yaz upstairs at Eric's?
Correct.
Yeah.
So and then Every Time You Go Away. So my question is, what the hell happened to this dude? Because in 1985, he was on fire. And then I kind of feel like he just never did anything else after this.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's still reaps the rewards.
Yeah, and he still probably plays every time you go away at the 80s cruise. But it's just interesting to me that he was so big and then nothing.
And then basically nothing. I mean, in our mind, nothing. But yeah, he probably did well throughout the 80s. And then when it got to the 90s, like so many other people from the 80s, he kind of just had to go away and do small venues and stuff like that. I don't know. But apparently they really hadn't had anybody live on the big broadcast from America yet. So that means that the Black Sabbath reunion wasn't broadcast live necessarily.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and then the first band, it said, and this is, I'm just reading the notes here, was American Intro, and first band is Bryan Adams. Well, Bryan Adams was not the first band to play, obviously. Before him, there was Bernard Watson, Joan Baez, the Hooters. So maybe this is from the English standpoint. I don't know. Maybe this is the BBC broadcast. Because I saw Joan Baez say, "This is your Woodstock." I don't remember Black Sabbath because I didn't really know who they were. I think I remember Rick Springfield. I think I remember Crosby, Stills, and Nash. But all that happened before. And Judas Priest I wouldn't have known very well back then, but Brian comes on at noon. And so, yeah, it's 5 hours. And so it's an American band and American intro and first band, because after Paul Young was on, then Bob Geldof gets up and says, "Hey, we want to welcome America. We want to welcome the U.S. to this," even though it had already been going on for a while. Yeah. That's on the DVD. We want to welcome, the U.S. We want you to give the money you have, and here's the number and all that kind of stuff. So, and then was it U2 after Bryan Adams was next? So this is the point at which they're starting to kind of jump back and forth. But Jack Nicholson, after the end of Bryan Adams, introduced U2 from Philadelphia, and then it cut back to London.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But this is one of the seminal moments in U2's career.
Yeah, and it was hard. It was hard to think about that for me, because to me, U2 has always been this giant globe-trotting world phenomenon. And to think, they were, they had War that had come out, but they were not the big arena band yet. So they definitely looked, they held their own, but they definitely looked a little like, wow, there's a lot of people here today. And then Bono started to get a little freaky when they started playing Bad.
Right. So they do Sunday Bloody Sunday, which you figured they would play, and then they do Bad, but they got pieces of Satellite of Love, they've got pieces of Ruby Tuesday, they got pieces of Walk on the Wild Side, plus Bono the hero saw a girl like getting crushed or whatever, so he had to hop down there and save her life. Whether he's saving her life or not, I don't know, but it certainly appeared that way. And then he's kind of, since then, kind of heralded as this savior, right? Like, oh, look at Bono. He stopped the show to go help this girl who was having a hard time. Oh, what an amazing guy. He saw somebody in trouble and he helped her.
Right.
Someone else down there could have too.
Right. Hey, take that hot blonde out of the crowd and bring her on up.
But Brian Ferry wasn't going to hop down there and do that, no matter how hot she was.
But yeah, because he hopped down to that first part, and then he actually got himself all the way down to the ground level, which was farther than I think he thought it was. Yeah. Too. And so then he gets back up, and there's people. He's got 3 or 4 ladies with him now on the stage, and they're all hugging on each other and everything. And it's actually pretty cool because you can tell the rest of the band, this is totally unrehearsed, but they're professional enough just to keep playing, like just play the bridge part over and over and over again till we figure out whatever the hell he's doing down there.
Right, exactly, and what happens. But it's kind of part of his legacy now is that he did that at Live Aid. That's part 1 of our take on Live Aid in review at 40. So much going on. Jackson and I had so much fun reminiscing about this day and then researching it and rewatching all the videos. We really just couldn't stop talking about it. We recorded a lot of information for this particular anniversary. So that's part 1. We wanted to kind of give you the breakdown of it and then go through the artists on the UK side before the simulcast kind of came in. And next week, we'll give you part 2, where we kind of run down all the rest when they're going back and forth, and then the primetime stuff in America, and there's plenty to talk about there. And the really exciting part, folks, is part Part 3, which is going to come out July 13th, the actual 40th anniversary of Live Aid. We're going to have interviews with a couple people who were there, including one of the original MTV VJs, which is super exciting for us. So I know you're going to want to listen to that. So you've got to download and subscribe to make sure you don't miss that when it comes over the next couple of weeks. Now, there's a lot of information to go over here. So we want to know, folks, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You email us and let us know. It's uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com, where you can let us know the bands, the albums, the concerts, the worldwide events, the DVDs, the rock properties you want to hear us talk about here on the show. And like I said, please download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Those downloads are the lifeblood of growing our show. And if you're thinking about it and want to help out, please give us a 5-star review. It means the world to us. It helps us find more rock and rollers like you. And if you send it our way, we might just read it on an episode. Thanks as always to Pantheon Podcast for making us part of the family. And thanks to our sponsor in the UK, rarevinyl.com, where if you use the code UGLY, you can save 10% off one entire order. That's it for this week. Next week, we're going to have part 2, and shortly thereafter, part 3 with some very special interviews from folks who were there that day. I think you're really going to love it. So please stay tuned. And until next time, to all you rockers all around the world, be cool and keep doing what you do to keep rock alive.